Hello friends, so today's video is going to be a list of some books that I read that were outside my comfort zone. Some of these were ones that were outside my comfort zone simply because of the genres that they were genres I don't typically pick up, and then some of them had certain what I call bookish buzzwords but anti-bookish buzzwords, so things that immediately make me think, I don't think I'll like that. But I often will still give those a try because some of my favorite books I've ever picked up were ones that were a little bit outside my comfort zone, that did have the things that I typically don't like, but every now and then when they're done a certain way, I end up loving them. So with this, I have a mix of books that didn't work and then a list of books that did, and I just kind of wanted to go through because I think it's really interesting the way that sometimes when we read outside our comfort zone, we can find those books that we end up being so surprised by. Sometimes it can lead us to find a whole new genre that we realize we actually really like. And then sometimes it's like, why did I waste my time with this? I hate this. And so I am very curious before I jump into my list, what are some books you read outside your comfort zone that you ended up loving? And then the opposite that you ended up disliking. Before I jump into it, a big thank you to Book of the Month for working with me on today's video. They're actually a lot of how I'm able to not only get books that are outside my comfort zone, but even find out about books that I might not have otherwise heard about because I'm so within the fantasy corner of booktube. And so if you don't know, which I'm sure a lot of you do, but Book of the Month has a wide selection of books every single month. They are brand new hardbacks and they are always from different genres. And so each month you have this selection that you can choose from. If there's more than one book you are interested in, you can do an add-on. And then also if there's a month that you're not really interested in the picks, you can skip that month, earn an extra credit, and you can use that credit in the future. So they are, like I said, the reason I'm able to read so much outside of my comfort zone, and I can do it so easily. They ship right to you. A couple of the books that I'll mention in this video actually did come from Book of the Month, but for this particular month, the two books that I picked are once again outside of my usual comfort zone. One of them would be romantic comedy, and it says a comedy writer thinks she's sworn off love until a pop star flips the script on all of her assumptions. And my second pick is Ana Maria and the Fox. It is a forbidden love between a Mexican heiress and a shrewd British politician, which makes for a tantalizing Victorian season. A big thank you again to Book of the Month. Now jumping into our list. I'll start with Witch's Heart. So I originally thought that I didn't like mythology retellings. I am fine with fairy tale retellings, but for some reason, I just always was under the assumption that I didn't like mythology retellings. And I'm not sure what it was about them that made me have this idea, but I was really set on it. And when I heard about this one, I just thought it was, to put it really bluntly and being kind of basic in my description, I thought it was going to be really boring. I thought it was like, who cares about this woman who's just like living by herself in this cave? And I just didn't really see the appeal. But I'd heard it was really beautiful and really lush, and it really hit hard, and so I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And then I ended up loving it. And the writing is really beautiful and lush, and it is a little bit slower going, and not a ton happens in the way of plot. It does cover a lot of years, and that was another reason I was unsure whether I would like it, because I don't tend to like books that within one book you cover a lifetime. Those don't usually appeal to me because I like seeing as characters go through certain events and then how they have to react to those events, and then how they use that information or how they use what they've learned to then move on to the next thing. And I like being with them through things. I don't like going over and glossing over large periods of time, but the way that it was done in this, I didn't feel like we were glossing over. It just felt like we were cutting out the fluff and we were getting to the meat of the impactful moments in this woman's life. So Witch's Heart follows a woman named Angrboda, who is a witch, and in Norse mythology, she is one of Loki's wives. But she is separate in a lot of ways from the rest of the gods, intentionally so, because they want to use her abilities for themselves, and she does not want to grant her powers to them. She doesn't want to give them ammunition to then have more power to do more conquering or to do potentially horrible things with. So she keeps to herself, she very much stays in secret, but Loki visits her, and then she eventually is known as the Mother of Monsters, and you dive into that within this book. And a lot of the themes and a lot of how it was written, the writing itself, the way that we reflect on this character's life, I just ate it up. I really liked it. I thought it was so gorgeous and beautifully done, and it really, my expectations were completely flipped on their head. So this was one of the successes. This is one of the times I read outside my comfort zone, and I'm very happy I did. Next up, we have A Game of Fate, and this was definitely a miss for me. This was not even close to being a success. It was a success in that I was entertained by how ridiculous it was, and I almost read the next one because I'm like, this is so ridiculous that I find it really, really funny, but that felt kind of mean, so I was like, okay, I'm not going to buy a book just for that. But regardless, this is a Persephone and Hades retelling, and it's steamy, and it's just not my cup of tea, but I have been enjoying picking up fantasy romance here and there. I think the difficult thing is, just like fantasy romance is essentially its own genre with a lot of different subgenres within it. And so just like how you might go to the fantasy section and have certain subgenres that you love and others that you can't stand, the same is true for this, where I just need to discover what my favorites are. What is the thing that I like? And then once I do that, then I'll end up having to do the outside my comfort zone just for fantasy romance. And I am discovering more of what I like, and I've been enjoying the journey. And I will say I enjoyed this part of the journey because it showed me, you know what? This isn't for me. But it was really fun because then I could share with my husband, and it's not his cup of tea either, so then we could just be like, this isn't for us, and it kind of was fun, so in a way it was almost a success. But as far as whether or not I greatly enjoyed the book and was moved by it and everything, it really was not for me. And if you're wondering, like, well, what else is there besides it being a Hades and Persephone retelling? Sexy times. That's basically the only other, well, that's not true. There's technically a plot line about one of the other, there's a goddess that then is tricking Hades and telling him, like, you've never even been in love. And then that's kind of part of the plot with Persephone. So there is a plot, but the plot is primarily there to either push these two individuals together or to create angst with these two individuals. And there's a club that Hades runs, because that's apparently a thing in a lot of Hades and Persephone retellings. Hades is always running some dark club, and it just wasn't for me. But like I said, it could almost be considered a success because it was entertaining. Next up is a book that I got because of Book of the Month, and that would be Mame. This was very difficult to read. It is a very difficult subject matter in general. We follow this young woman whose father has Parkinson's, and he definitely requires a lot of assistance and help, and a lot of that is put on Mame, our main character. That's a nickname that her family has given her. And she feels like she should be taking care of him. It's her father. She loves him. She wants to help him. But at the same time, she's young, and she really hasn't been able to have the chance to live life for herself. But any little bit of freedom that she might want to have within her own life, she feels so much guilt for trying to have that, and for even trying to have any kind of a life of her own. She's always been that person that's taking care of her father. She really doesn't have help from her brother. She really doesn't have help from her mother, and all this is on her, and how it weighs on her, and the way that this book handles grief, the way it handles identity. There's just so much to it that is so well done, and it was so difficult for me to read because while not the exact same situation, many of you know that I was my father's caretaker when he wasn't doing well with his health, and then there's a lot to grieving when he passed away, and there's just so much that I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like the most accurate thing I have ever read in regards to what this feels like. And it makes you feel sort of less alone because, you know, I don't know anyone else who's gone through that exact experience or something even close to that. And so to see something, at least that has some parallels to what I went through, it was very, very personal and something I could relate to so well. And on top of that, I would say this is almost autofiction in that it seems a lot of what the author is writing about, while in a fictional story, comes from personal life experiences, and it shows because I don't know how else to put it. It just felt so raw and real. It was fantastic. As soon as I read it, thought, this is going to end up being a book that you see, if you go to a bookstore, you'll see like tables and they'll have the cover art, or it'll be on the ends of aisles, and I bet it's going to be a Goodreads nominee. I wouldn't even be surprised if maybe it doesn't win, because there's probably going to be some, I don't know, some random like super popular author that would win, but I would think it would get a lot of votes and a lot of attention. It's very good. So not only a time I went outside my comfort zone and was pleasantly surprised, but also thanks book of the month, because I don't know that I would have known about this book otherwise. Next up we have House in the Cerulean Sea. This one was a miss for me. I can see why so many people love it. I can see why so many people resonate with it, especially around when it really blew up and became popular. So many of us were feeling so alone, so isolated, and this was just like a ray of sunshine for a lot of people. Not to say that they wouldn't have liked it otherwise, but just I can absolutely see why it has so much value to so many people. It just didn't hit the same way for me, and it is definitely outside my comfort zone in that a lot of the fantasy I pick up is not really rooted in everyday life, and oh, this man who's somewhat apathetic is now discovering what it is to feel again, and it's through this experience with these sweet orphans who the world has cast aside and labeled them as not normal, or that they are bad inherently because of XYZ reason. And there's this sense of othering that I think a lot of people have experienced, especially remembering how they experienced it as a child, or even now, how they don't want their own children to have to experience that. There's just so much to it that I absolutely see why it's so meaningful, but I don't always like books that are tied to our own world, but then with just some fantasy sprinkled in. But what's really interesting is that I read the book The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which has a really similar premise, and I loved that one. So this concept of hit or miss, actually both of these books fell into the outside my comfort zone within the same area, the same kind of subgenre, and even similar plots, but one I really liked and one I really didn't care for. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying about just kind of discovering when you do get into a subgenre specifically, rather than just an entirely new genre, when you do get into a subgenre, it is fun to kind of figure out what you like, and it is fun to give books a chance, because Irregular Witches is one of my favorite books now, and then this one, while it didn't work for me personally, I know it's worked for so many people, but yes, that one, it was, as I have described it, just a little too sugary sweet. And the analogy I gave at one point was when you see a very nice, lovely child going to get frozen yogurt, self-serve frozen yogurt, and they just put everything in the kitchen sink within their little dish, and you're like, that looks disgusting. There's like gummy bears and sprinkles and M&Ms, and the flavors, they've got like chocolate and banana, and you're just like, what is that going to taste like? Probably garbage, but it's just like this lovely little rainbow, and it's fun for the kid to get to try all these things. And House in the Cerulean Sea was just like, look at all these beautiful, lovely, cute things, and just none of it really had, you know, it just, I wanted a little bit more, I guess, meatiness to it. Not literally meat, but I wanted something a little less sugary sweet. But it is cute. It just wasn't for me. And then last for today, we have The Last Tale of The Flower Bride. On paper, if you describe this to me, I would probably tell you that doesn't sound like anything I'm interested in. But I read the synopsis, and I had that thought initially for myself, and I was like, you know what, though? It could be cool. You know, maybe you should give it a go. It's gothic magical realism, essentially, and that is not my thing. Magical realism is very much not my thing. I don't necessarily care for books that you're constantly like, is this happening? I don't always like that. And especially within gothic horror fantasy, where there's weird things happening and scary things happening, or creepy. This one's, I wouldn't necessarily say scary, but there are alarming, disturbing things happening. So the reason that doesn't always appeal to me within a gothic or magical realism setting is because I just feel like the whole thing feels like a fever dream. Literally, as in, when I have a fever and I can't fall asleep, and I'm just like, I want to fall asleep, and it's almost like you're so tired you can't sleep, and then your brain is almost dreaming, and you're just flipping out, and I don't like that in books, because I don't like that experience in general. But this one did have where the foundation is sort of based in fairy tales, and I'm like, I mean, that's kind of interesting. So maybe I'll give it a go. And I ended up really, really liking this one. It is not going to be for everybody, not just for the specific reasons that I described before, but because it's both simultaneously very, very, very dark, but then also almost like coming of age, a reflection on trauma. It's a lot of what trauma does to the mind, but within a magical realism setting. So was definitely one that I was on the fence about. It's definitely one I think a lot of other people are going to be on the fence about, and when they pick up probably won't like, but for the people that do like it, I think they're going to really, really love it. The writing itself is also very flowery, no pun intended, but there was something about the way it was done that I actually really, really liked. But once again, there's a lot of individuals who don't really like overly flowery writing, and I usually fall into that camp. I don't like the kind of writing that is too abstract or too metaphorical or too purple prosy. I actually prefer when it's a little bit more to the point and a little bit blunt and without ornament, but I liked it in this. So all around, there's just so many things about this one that I didn't think would work for me, and it ultimately very much did. That's it for some books that were outside of my comfort zone, some of which were fails or misses, and some of which were definitely successes. I would love to know what failures and successes there have been for books that you've tried to branch out with. Also, a big thank you again to Book of the Month. There's a lot of books that I likely wouldn't have picked up if it wasn't for their service. So big thank you to them for working with me. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.